Young surfer torn apart by largest shark near coast. Beneath the churning surf of Blue Haven, a shadow glided through the depths. Titan, the legendary great white shark, prowled his domain with unchallenged authority. For years, whispers of his presence haunted the coastal town, spreading fear like an insidious tide. On shore, the morning sun painted the sky in hues of orange and gold. Kai Dawson zipped up his wetsuit, his surfboard tucked under his arm. At 18, Kai lived for the rush of riding waves, chasing the thrill of the ocean's power. "Kai, wait up!" Mia jogged across the sand, her dark hair whipping in the breeze. As Kai's best friend and an avid diver, Mia shared his love for the sea, but tempered it with caution. Kai grinned. "Perfect conditions today. Are you coming out?" Mia shook her head. "Not this time. Listen, the locals have been talking. They say Titan's been spotted recently. Maybe we should stick to the shallows." Kai laughed, his green eyes sparkling with reckless confidence. "Mia, you can't believe those old stories. I'm not afraid of some overgrown fish. It's not just stories, Kai. People have seen it. Your dad." "My dad worries too much." Kai's smile faltered slightly. "I know what I'm doing." Mia sighed, knowing she couldn't change his mind. "Just be careful, okay?" Kai nodded, giving her a quick hug before sprinting towards the waves. Mia watched him paddle out, a sense of unease settling in her stomach. The ocean held wonders, but also dangers lurking beneath the surface. Miles away, on a rocky outcrop overlooking the sea, Ben Dawson lowered his binoculars. The former marine biologist had spent his life studying the ocean's delicate balance, fighting to protect the creatures within it. But now, as he watched his son's lone figure disappear into the distant waves, a chill ran down his spine. Ben knew the stories of Titan weren't mere legends. He had seen the evidence himself, and had tried to warn the town of the real threat lurking off their shores. But fear had a way of breeding denial, and the people of Blue Haven preferred to dismiss Ben's claims as the ravings of a grieving widower, still lost after his wife's death years ago. Turning from the cliff's edge, Ben made his way back to his battered pickup truck. The vehicle was a relic, much like Ben himself, weathered by time and loss, but still resilient. As he drove down the winding coastal road towards town, Ben's thoughts drifted to Kai. Since losing his mother, Kai had sought solace in the ocean, finding a connection to her memory in the untamed waves. Ben understood that draw, that primal need for the sea. But he also knew the risks, the price that could be paid for underestimating the raw power of nature. Pulling up to their modest house, Ben spotted Kai's empty room through the window. A familiar worry gnawed at him, but he pushed it down. He had to trust that Kai would be safe, that the lessons he tried to instill would keep him from harm. If only he knew how wrong he was. Out on the water, Kai paddled steadily, scanning the horizon for the perfect wave. The sun glinted off the ocean's surface, casting diamond-bright reflections that danced hypnotically. Seagulls wheeled overhead, their cries carried on the salt-tinged wind. As he waited, Kai's thoughts drifted to the stories of Titan. He'd grown up hearing the tales, whispered warnings passed down through generations of Blue Haven's fishermen and surfers. But to Kai, Titan was more myth than reality. A bogeyman used to scare children away from the water's edge. And yet, there was a part of him, a small, primal part, that thrilled at the idea of something so powerful lurking beneath the waves. To conquer a creature like that, to ride the ultimate wave in its presence, it would be the ultimate rush. Lost in his thoughts, Kai almost missed the telltale sign of a building swell. Turning his board, he began to paddle, his heart pounding with anticipation. As the wave rose behind him, he popped up onto his feet, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline as he dropped into the barrel. For a moment, the world fell away. There was only the roar of the wave, the rush of water beneath his board, the salty spray on his face. This was where Kai felt most alive, most connected to something greater than himself. And then, in a heartbeat, everything changed. A dark shape, massive and fast, rose from the depths directly beneath Kai. Time seemed to slow as the monstrous form breached the surface, its jaws wide, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Titan had found his prey. On shore, a scream tore through the morning air. Mia, who had been scanning the horizon with a sense of growing dread, witnessed the moment that would forever be seared into Blue Haven's collective memory. In a violent spray of foam and blood, Titan struck. Kai disappeared beneath the churning waves, his board shattered into driftwood. The ocean itself seemed to shudder, as if recoiling from the sudden violence. Mia ran, frantically dialing 911 as she sprinted towards the water's edge. All around her, the beach erupted into chaos as people began to realize what had happened. Some raced towards the shore, desperate to help, while others fled in panic. In the midst of the turmoil, Ben Dawson's truck tore into the parking lot, tires spraying sand. He leapt out, his face a mask of anguish as he saw the gathering crowd, the flashing lights of the approaching emergency vehicles. Pushing his way through the throng, Ben reached Mia. The young woman was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "Kai," she choked out, pointing towards the water. "Titan." It took him. Ben stared out at the waves, now stained red with his son's blood. A cold, terrible understanding settled over him. This was the moment he had always feared, the horror he had tried so hard to prevent. As the Coast Guard arrived and began the fruitless search for Kai's body, Ben stood motionless on the sand. Grief, raw and overwhelming, battled with a rising tide of anger within him. Titan had taken his son, but Ben Dawson was not a man to succumb to despair. He had faced loss before, had clawed his way back from the depths of sorrow, and now, with a grim determination born of love and pain, Ben silently vowed that this time, he would not be broken. He would find a way to confront the monster, not for vengeance, but for something far more profound. For the first time in years, the people of Blue Haven truly understood the horror that lurked offshore. And in that moment of shared trauma, the seeds of transformation began to take root. The days following Kai's death passed in a blur of grief and shock. Blue Haven, once a sleepy coastal haven, now buzzed with a palpable undercurrent of fear. Beaches stood empty, shops closed early, and a heavy silence settled over the town like a shroud. At Kai's memorial service, the community gathered to mourn. Mia stood beside Ben, her hand resting gently on his arm. The two had grown close in their shared grief, finding solace in the understanding that only those who have lost deeply can provide. As friends and neighbors offered condolences, Ben couldn't help but notice the looks of pity mixed with a hint of accusation. He had warned them about Titan and had tried to make them understand the danger. And now, in the wake of tragedy, some couldn't help but wonder if more could have been done. Mia sensed Ben's discomfort and gently led him away from the crowd. They walked along the shore, the same stretch of sand where Kai had taken his last steps. "It's not your fault," Mia said softly, breaking the heavy silence. "You did everything you could to protect him." Ben sighed, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Did I? I should have been there, should have stopped him from going out that day. Kai made his own choices. You can't blame yourself for that." "I know." Ben's voice was heavy with sorrow. "But I also know that I can't just sit back and do nothing. Titan is still out there, and as long as he is, no one in Blue Haven is safe." Mia nodded, understanding the unspoken determination in Ben's words. "What are you going to do?" Ben turned to face her, his eyes blazing with a fierce resolve. "I'm going to find a way to stop Titan. Not by killing him, but by understanding him. By finding a way to protect both the people and the ocean." Mia placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone, Ben. Kai's death has changed things. People are starting to see that we can't just hide from the truth anymore." And as they stood there, united in their grief and their purpose, the first sparks of change began to flicker in Blue Haven. A town once divided by fear now had a chance to come together, to find strength in the face of tragedy. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but with Ben's determination and Mia's unwavering support, a glimmer of hope began to shine through the darkness. Blue Haven's story was far from over. As the weeks passed, Ben threw himself into his quest with a single-minded focus. He spent long hours poring over old research papers, studying shark behavior and migration patterns. He reached out to former colleagues, marine biologists and conservationists, seeking their insights and expertise. But even as he worked tirelessly, Ben couldn't escape the weight of his grief. Every night, he dreamed of Kai, memories of his son's laughter, his infectious love of life, intertwined with nightmares of that fateful day on the water. Mia became a constant presence, a steadying force in the chaos of Ben's world. She brought him meals when he forgot to eat, dragged him outside for walks when the walls of his study began to close in. Together, they began to piece together a plan, a way to confront Titan that didn't rely on violence or vengeance. But not everyone in Blue Haven shared their vision. As the town struggled to come to terms with Kai's death, old divisions began to resurface. There were those who called for Titan's immediate extermination, who saw the shark as nothing more than a mindless killer to be eliminated at all costs. Leading the charge was Jack Holden, a local fisherman with a long-held grudge against the ocean's predators. Holden had lost his own father to a shark attack decades ago, and the wounds of that trauma had never fully healed. "We can't just sit back and wait for that monster to strike again," Holden argued at a town meeting, his face flushed with anger. "It's time we take matters into our own hands before more innocent lives are lost." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and Ben felt a surge of frustration. He understood their fear, their desire for action. But he also knew that lashing out in anger would only breed more violence, more destruction. As the meeting devolved into heated arguments and shouted accusations, Mia stood up, her voice cutting through the din. "Enough," she said, her eyes blazing. "Don't you see? This is exactly what Titan wants. He feeds on our fear, our hatred. If we give in to those impulses, we're no better than the monster we're trying to fight." A stunned silence fell over the room, and Ben felt a swell of pride. Mia's words had struck a chord and had forced the town to confront the reality of their situation. "We have to find another way," Ben said, stepping forward. "A way that honors Kai's memory, that protects both the people and the ocean. It won't be easy, but if we work together, if we trust in each other, I believe we can find a path forward." And as he looked around the room, Ben saw the first glimmers of understanding in the faces of his neighbors. It was a small step, but it was a beginning. Blue Haven had a long journey ahead, but for the first time since Kai's death, there was a sense of purpose, a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. As the town grappled with the fallout of Kai's death, Mia found herself increasingly drawn to the water. It was a pull she had always felt, a connection that ran deep in her bones. But now, in the wake of tragedy, the ocean took on a new meaning. She spent long hours diving, exploring the vibrant world beneath the waves. In the silent depths, surrounded by the pulsing life of the reef, Mia felt a sense of peace, a temporary escape from the grief that haunted her waking hours. But even amidst the beauty, she couldn't shake the knowledge of the danger that lurked nearby. Titan's presence was a constant shadow, a reminder of the delicate balance between life and death in the vast expanse of the ocean. One morning, as Mia surfaced from a particularly long dive, she found Ben waiting for her on the shore. There was a gleam in his eye, a flicker of excitement that she hadn't seen since Kai's death. "I think I found something," he said, his voice tight with anticipation. "A way to track Titan, to understand his movements without harming him." Mia's eyes widened. "What is it?" Ben held up a small device no larger than a cell phone. "It's a new type of acoustic tag, designed to monitor a shark's behavior without interfering with its normal patterns. If we can attach it to Titan, we'll be able to track his movements, learn more about why he's here and what drives him." Mia felt a thrill of hope, tempered by a flicker of apprehension. "But how do we get close enough to tag him without putting ourselves in danger?" Ben's smile was grim. "That's where you come in. You're the best diver I know, Mia. If anyone can get close to Titan, it's you." Mia hesitated, the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. She knew the risks, the danger of approaching a creature as powerful and unpredictable as Titan. But she also knew that if they didn't try, if they didn't find a way to understand, the cycle of fear and violence would never end. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady with determination. For Kai and for Blue Haven, Ben nodded, pride and gratitude mingling in his expression. We'll need to be careful to plan every step. But I believe in you, Mia. I believe in us. And as they stood there on the shore, the sun glinting off the waves, Mia felt a sense of purpose, a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. They had a long road ahead, a journey fraught with challenges and uncertainties. But for the first time since Kai's death, she felt a sense of direction, a glimmer of light guiding their way forward. Together, Ben and Mia began to plan, to lay the groundwork for a mission that would test their courage and their resolve. The ocean held many secrets, many dangers, but it also held the key to understanding, to finding a way to coexist with the wild beauty and power of nature. And in that understanding, perhaps they would find the strength to heal, to build a future that honored Kai's memory and protected the wonders of the sea for generations to come. As Ben and Mia prepared for their mission, the town of Blue Haven continued to grapple with the aftermath of Kai's death. Grief and fear mingled with a growing sense of unease, a feeling that something fundamental had shifted in the fabric of their community. Holden and his supporters grew more vocal, their calls for vengeance against Titan taking on an increasingly aggressive tone. They organized rallies on the beach, waving signs and chanting slogans, demanding action against the monster that had stolen one of their own. But amidst the anger and the pain, there were also glimmers of hope, small acts of kindness that began to stitch the town back together. Neighbors checked in on one another, bringing meals and offering words of comfort. The local diner started a Pay It Forward program, allowing customers to buy meals for those in need. And in the center of town, a makeshift memorial for Kai sprang up, a collection of flowers, photos, and handwritten notes that served as a reminder of the light he had brought to so many lives. As the days passed, Ben and Mia threw themselves into their preparations with a sense of urgency. They spent long hours studying maps of the local currents, charting Titan's known movements and hunting patterns. They consulted with experts from around the world, gathering insights and advice on how to safely approach and tag a great white shark. But even as they worked tirelessly, the weight of their mission hung heavy on their shoulders. They knew the risks, the danger of coming face to face with a creature as powerful and unpredictable as Titan. And yet, they also knew that they had no choice. If they didn't find a way to understand, to build a bridge between the human world and the wild beauty of the ocean, the cycle of fear and violence would never end. One evening, as they sat hunched over a pile of research papers in Ben's living room, Mia looked up, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. "We're going to do this, aren't we?" she said, her voice steady. "We're going to find a way to make things right." Ben nodded, his own resolve mirroring hers. "We have to, for Kai and for everyone in Blue Haven. We can't let fear control us anymore." Mia reached out, her hand finding his. "Together," she said, "a promise and a prayer." And as they sat there, united in their grief and their hope, the town of Blue Haven continued to turn, caught between the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future. Change was coming, a shift in the tides that would reshape the very foundation of their community. But for now, Ben and Mia focused on the task at hand, on the mission that would take them into the heart of the ocean's mysteries. They knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but they also knew that they had each other and the strength of their shared purpose. And in that knowledge, they found the courage to keep moving forward, to chase the light amidst the darkness, and to believe in the power of understanding to heal even the deepest of wounds. The morning of the mission dawned clear and bright, the ocean stretching out before them like a vast, glittering expanse. Ben and Mia stood on the shore, their equipment packed and ready, their hearts pounding with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. They had chosen a spot far from the main beaches, a secluded cove where Titan had been spotted in recent weeks. The plan was simple, but risky. Mia would dive down, using a specially designed underwater scooter to approach the shark quickly and quietly. Once she was close enough, she would use a long pole to attach the acoustic tag to Titan's dorsal fin, a process that required both skill and split-second timing. Ben would monitor her progress from the boat, ready to pull her out at the first sign of trouble. They had gone over the plan countless times, rehearsing every step until it felt like second nature. But now, standing on the cusp of the unknown, the reality of what they were about to attempt hit home with a sudden, dizzying clarity. Mia turned to Ben, her eyes searching for him. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ben reached out, his hand finding hers. "I'm sure about you," he said, his voice steady with conviction. "You're the strongest, bravest person I know, Mia. If anyone can do this, it's you." Mia nodded, drawing strength from his words, from the warmth of his touch. She knew the risks, the danger that awaited her beneath the waves. But she also knew that this was her chance to make a difference, to find a way forward that didn't rely on fear or violence. With a final squeeze of Ben's hand, Mia turned and waded into the water, the chill of the ocean washing over her like a baptism. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the task ahead, and then dove beneath the surface, the world above disappearing in a rush of bubbles and blue. As she descended deeper into the ocean's embrace, Mia felt a sense of calm settle over her, a clarity of purpose that cut through the fear and uncertainty. She moved through the water with practiced grace, her eyes scanning the depths for any sign of Titan. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw it. A flash of movement, a glint of silver in the dappled sunlight. Titan, his massive form gliding through the water with a power and grace that took her breath away. Mia felt her heart skip a beat, a thrill of adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the chance to come face to face with the creature that had haunted her dreams and her waking hours. With a steady hand, she reached for the pole, the acoustic tag glinting at its tip. She took a deep breath, centering herself, and then kicked forward, propelling herself towards Titan with a burst of speed. The shark sensed her approach, his body tensing, his tail flicking with a sudden, coiled energy. Mia braced herself, ready for the rush of water, the flash of teeth. But instead, Titan turned, his dark eye fixing on her with an intelligence that took her breath away. For a moment, they hung there, suspended in the blue, a human and a shark, two creatures from different worlds, brought together by the currents of fate. And in that moment, Mia saw something in Titan's gaze, a flicker of understanding, a recognition of the bond that tied them together, predator and prey, hunter and hunted. With a quick, precise movement, Mia reached out, the tag finding its mark on Titan's dorsal fin. The shark shuddered, his body twisting away, and then he was gone, disappearing into the depths with a flick of his tail. Mia hung there, her heart pounding, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. She had done it. She had faced the monster, and in doing so, had found a glimmer of hope, a way forward that didn't rely on fear or hatred. As she kicked towards the surface, the sunlight filtering down through the waves, Mia felt a sense of triumph, a surge of pride and purpose that filled her with a renewed sense of determination. The road ahead was long, and the challenges many. But with Ben by her side, and the strength of their shared conviction, she knew that anything was possible. They had taken the first step, had begun the journey towards understanding, towards healing the wounds that had torn their community apart. And in that moment, as she broke the surface and felt the warmth of the sun on her face, Mia knew that they would never stop fighting, never stop working to build a future that honored Kai's memory and protected the wild, untamed beauty of the world they called home. As Mia emerged from the water, the acoustic tag securely attached to Titan's dorsal fin, a cheer erupted from the small group gathered on the shore. Ben stood at the forefront, his face splitting into a wide grin as he pulled Mia into a tight embrace. "You did it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." Mia clung to him, her heart still pounding with the adrenaline of the dive. She had faced her fears, had looked into the eyes of the creature that had haunted her dreams, and had found a way to bridge the gap between their worlds. But even as they celebrated, the weight of the work ahead hung heavy in the air. The tag was just the first step, a way to gather data and insights into Titan's behavior and movements. The real challenge would be using that information to find a way to coexist, to build a future that respects the delicate balance of the ocean's ecosystem. As the days passed, Ben and Mia pored over the data streaming in from the tag, mapping Titan's movements and analyzing his patterns. They discovered that the shark was not the mindless killer that so many had feared, but a complex, intelligent creature with his own rhythms and reasons. They learned that Titan was not alone, that he was part of a larger web of life that stretched from the darkest depths of the ocean to the sunlit shallows of the reef. And they began to understand that the true threat to Blue Haven was not the sharks that swam in its waters, but the fear and ignorance that had driven them to the brink of conflict. Armed with this new understanding, Ben and Mia began to reach out to the community, sharing their findings and their vision for a different way forward. They spoke at town meetings and in school classrooms, explaining the vital role that sharks played in maintaining the health of the ocean and the importance of finding a way to coexist with these majestic creatures. At first, they were met with skepticism and resistance, the wounds of Kai's death still raw and painful. But slowly, as the data continued to pour in and the stories of Titan's complex life began to take shape, the tide began to turn. People began to see the sharks not as monsters, but as vital parts of the ecosystem, creatures deserving of respect and protection. And as the fear began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of understanding and empathy, the community of Blue Haven began to heal. It was a slow process, a journey marked by setbacks and challenges. But through it all, Ben and Mia remained steadfast in their commitment to the cause, driven by the memory of Kai and the hope for a better future. And as the weeks turned into months, and the data from Titan's tag continued to paint a picture of a complex, interconnected world beneath the waves, they began to see the first glimmers of change. The beaches of Blue Haven, once empty and haunted by fear, began to fill with people once more. But now, instead of running from the water, they came to learn, to understand, to marvel at the beauty and power of the ocean and all the creatures that called it home. And at the heart of it all, Titan swam on, a silent sentinel of the deep, a reminder of the wild, untamed beauty that had brought them all together, and the power of understanding to heal even the deepest of wounds. As the summer drew to a close, the town of Blue Haven found itself on the cusp of a new beginning. The fear and grief that had once gripped the community had given way to a sense of cautious optimism, a belief in the possibility of a different way forward. But even as the town began to heal, the specter of the past still lingered, a reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. For Ben and Mia, the work was far from over. The data from Titan's tag had given them invaluable insights into the shark's behavior and movements, but it had also raised new questions, new mysteries to be unraveled. One evening, as they sat in Ben's living room, poring over the latest batch of data, a knock at the door startled them from their thoughts. Ben rose to answer it, his brow furrowed with confusion. To his surprise, Jack Holden stood on the other side, his face etched with a mix of determination and uncertainty. Ben tensed, bracing himself for another confrontation, another battle in the war that had divided their town for so long. But instead of anger or accusation, Holden's voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "I need to talk to you," he said, his eyes flickering to Mia. "Both of you." Ben hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, allowing Holden to enter. The three of them stood in the living room, the tension palpable in the air. "I've been watching you," Holden said, his voice gruff, "seeing what you've been doing with the tag and the data and all. And I've been thinking." He paused, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I lost my father to a shark years ago. It's a pain that never really goes away, a hole in your heart that never quite heals." Ben nodded, understanding all too well the depths of that grief. "But watching you too, seeing the way you've tried to understand, to find a way to make things right." Holden's voice trailed off, and he took a deep breath. "This made me realize that maybe there's another way. Maybe the answer isn't more killing, more violence. Maybe it's in learning to live with the ocean instead of trying to tame it." Mia's eyes widened, a flicker of hope sparking in her chest. "What are you saying, Jack?" Holden met her gaze, his jaw set with determination. "I'm saying I want to help. I want to be a part of this, of finding a way to make things right. For all of us." Ben felt a lump rise in his throat, a swell of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. He had never expected this, never dared to hope that the man who had once been his fiercest opponent would become an ally in the fight for understanding. But as he looked at Holden, he saw a man transformed, a man who had faced his own demons and emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. "We'd be honored to have you with us, Jack," Ben said, his voice thick with emotion. "Together we can do this. We can find a way to heal, to build a future that honors the memory of all those we've lost." And as the three of them stood there, united in their grief and their hope, the town of Blue Haven continued to turn, caught in the inexorable currents of change. The journey was far from over, the challenges many and daunting. But with each passing day, with each new ally and each small victory, the tide began to turn, a shift in the balance of power that would reshape the very fabric of their community. And at the heart of it all, Titan swam on, a silent guardian of the deep, a reminder of the wild, untamed beauty that had the power to unite them all and to lead them towards a brighter, more hopeful future. As the weeks passed and the data from Titan's tag continued to paint a picture of the complex world beneath the waves, Ben and Mia found themselves at the center of a growing movement. With Jack Holden's support and the backing of a community united in its desire for change, they began to lay the groundwork for a new way of life in Blue Haven. They worked tirelessly, reaching out to experts and organizations from around the world, gathering knowledge and resources to help guide their efforts. They spoke at town meetings and in schools, sharing their vision of a future in which humans and sharks could coexist in harmony, each playing a vital role in the delicate balance of the ocean's ecosystem.